Okay, well, I'm going to start recording because Google Hangouts, I never know when the recording actually starts.
Okay. And Chelsea, I might start, since she's going to ask us about the business formation, I'll probably start with talking about that.
That's
And
fine.
and then you can come in with talking about the partnership and how that's grown in the last couple of months and how we decided to work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I also saw on your Instagram, Beth, that you received an award recently.
Yeah.
Chelsea, would you mind highlighting that at an appropriate time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Well, what a lovely time to have a great episode with three women about not just entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship in the realm of birth and labor, especially in a world where hospitals are being turned upside down, right? But before we dive too much into that, Beth, Chelsea of Heart Tones Birth, can you guys give us a quick rundown of the company, what you two do together, all of that jazz?
Yeah, definitely. So thanks so much for having us on. My
Yeah.
name is Beth Hardy, and I am the owner of Heart Tones Birth Services. And Chelsea's going to talk a little bit about how we got together as a partnership this past year, starting in 2020, just in January. But Heart Tones Birth Services has been around for several years. I moved to Utah in 2015 and started the business then. I saw a need for excellent doula services in Salt Lake, and especially for people from marginalized communities. We do work a lot with the LGBTQ community and find that there's a big need there for support and advocacy in the birth space. So that's kind of one of our angles of who we work with, but we love serving a lot of different families in Salt Lake and the general, Salt Lake Valley. And starting about maybe last year, maybe in 2018 or 2019, I started to feel really the need for a doula partner. A lot of doulas work solo and a lot of doulas burn out. Typically, the burnout rate's like about 3 years in, doulas stop doing birth work because it's really, it's hard. It's taxing.
Yeah.
It's exhausting to be on call and to just pick up and leave wherever you are and to be at a birth for an unknown amount of time. And a lot of doulas also, unfortunately, I don't feel like they charge their living wage. They don't charge enough to actually make it worth spending 48 hours with a client or whatever. And so I saw that need. And so I put the word out for a partner. And I was really specific in what I wanted. And I was really open and honest with who I was looking for. I really wanted someone who was very open-minded, willing to learn about communities that they might not be a part of, people that they might not, identify with personally, or maybe they do, and wanted someone like that. So that's where Chelsea came into my life, and it was the best thing ever. Yeah. So Chelsea, tell her a little bit about how we met and kind of what we've been doing, maybe.
Okay, so I became a doula. Beth's been in the doula world for a lot longer, but I became a doula last year, was certified in January of last year, and really hit the ground running. I became very passionate about the work, love it, and realized, so midway through last year, I ended up having an emergency surgery and unfortunately had to give one of my clients away to a partnership or to a doula backup. And so that was really hard, but it was a really huge eye opener for me to realize that I couldn't do this all the time solo. And so I was like, how do I not get the burnout? How do I maintain this?
Especially when you love it so much. Like the last thing you want is to find this passion and then throw it all away because you ran at it too fast.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So I started realizing that I wanted to get more involved in the LGBT community as well, and kind of had put that out there. I had talked to my husband about it and didn't really know a lot of the doulas here in Utah because I was trained in Portland, Oregon, because it was the quickest route I could go. And so I wasn't really ingrained into the community here of the doula population and didn't really know much about it. And so I became a part of the Utah Doula Association. And towards the end of last year, Beth had posted something on this particular forum asking, saying, hey, I'm looking for a partnership. And I immediately fell in love with what the idea of a partnership and being able to swap each other out at births. And so, but also be able to maintain a life with our families.
Yes.
And be able to be there for children's birthdays and not have to miss out a ton on their growing up life. And so fell in love with Beth and met her at a coffee shop, and we just started talking and just really got excited for the potential to work with her. And I left that meeting like on cloud 9, and I called my husband and I was like, I hope she chooses me. So she's just an incredible businesswoman, and she understands birth and all kinds of birth. And I just loved that a lot of our ideas on birth were the same. I needed to find someone who wasn't strict, like I don't want any medical interventions, because I think there's a place and for medical, so in the birth realm. But I also love the holistic approach too. So yeah, Beth chose me and jumped on board with that. And because I was so new in this community and starting my own business, I just kind of really gravitated towards her birth platform. And so we're in the process of kind of phasing out my business and just kind of rolling with Heart Tones Birth, and I love it.
Cool. Well, and I want to correct something I said earlier too about like running too fast. But maybe it's not running too fast, but running alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you're an entrepreneur, right, and you have this idea and you're excited, sometimes it can be daunting to share that with others. You're not sure, like both of you said, you wanted to find the right partner. You want to make sure that you shared the similar approaches and ideas around all of these things. And it's not necessarily always easy to find a good partner.
Oh my God, I was so nervous. I probably waited 6 months to post what I wanted to post online, that I wanted to look for a partner, because I was so nervous about it, partially because I was like, what if I don't find someone? Like, what if I have
nobody sees eye to eye with me? What if I'm this weirdo that...
Exactly. It felt like going on a blind date, or like putting myself out there like in the dating world, because I was like, what if nobody like jives with me or my ideas or likes me? Or, it's vulnerable to put yourself out there and to be very honest with what you're looking for, and not to try to be like pretend and fake and what you think people want. It's like just putting out what you really are. There's a vulnerability to that. And so, but I got a lot of responses, and it was really, really encouraging to see, like, and that's kind of been a learning thing for me, that my whole business, my whole entrepreneurial career is like being honest and real, and knowing that as scary as that can feel, there's people out there who are looking exactly for you, who you are, and not for some cookie cutter person. And so that's what I've tried to do my whole time, and it's been really great and successful so far.
Yeah, which I'd love both of your takes on this. What are your thoughts around, or do you feel like by having found each other, by realizing that someone within the same profession shared similar thoughts, goals, aspirations as you, do you feel like that then opened your eyes to be like, there are probably even more people that, if I'm finding people professionally who want to collaborate with me, there are probably more people out there that actually want my services as well.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's been a really cool eye-opening experience to see how much our business has like leveled up in just it's like April now, in 4 months. I mean, it's been crazy. We've gotten consistent people getting in touch with us, consistent hires. And it's almost like when that energy shifts and someone new comes into the picture, like Chelsea did for me, it just like everything levels up, everything shifts and changes. And it's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice too because you don't have to wear all the hats. You get to split the responsibilities.
Totally.
But so what about Heart Tones Birth, your work in the doula area, you feel like is particularly entrepreneurial? Where have you felt you've had to kind of step out into the darkness, be a risk taker, innovate, and all of that within your field?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in and kind of define that for people what entrepreneurship is, because I feel like it's kind of a daunting word, because like you said, it's a risk taker. And so when I jumped into doula work, I did not jump in being like, I'm going to be my own boss and I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to start a business and it's going to be great. Like, no, for me, it started with I had to find a passion and a drive into the work. And so once I found my passion, it almost became seamless a little bit. So for me, like an entrepreneur is someone who's willing to take risks, fighting against the odds and leaping forward with a driving force towards a passion and a purpose. And so that's kind of how I would define an entrepreneur.
Well, but what makes you an entrepreneur then, Chelsea?
Finding my passion.
Yeah.
And really running with it. For me, a risk was finances. Like, how could I make being a doula an actual job and be sustainable with it?
Yeah.
And so it's really stretched me to believe in the work so much that I really want everyone to have a doula at their birth, and I really believe in advocacy, and so really taking that step of just really needing to be able to make it a sustainable effort. And so
having the passion be strong enough to overpower any sort of risk aversion. Because you have this, I feel like this is common with any entrepreneur in any industry, is that you feel this urgent need to risk everything to do what you have to do because people need it, and they needed it yesterday.
Yep. I completely agree with that.
Something though, pop in, I feel like the passion is what ignites the fire, and then it almost is like you don't want to burn out too quick. You don't want to burn too hot where you get kind of like we're talking about with working alone, feeling like you're not supported. And so finding a community, I think, is really important of people that can kind of hold you up when you're having difficult times and when you're not getting hired and when you're like struggling with why isn't anyone finding me. To find those communities of people that are in your field or in similar fields that can say, well, here's what I did. I think it took me a couple years of really working hard to try to get my name out there here in Salt Lake before I was actually getting people that were finding me. Yeah. And that's a long time, like 2 or 3 years of working where it's like, okay, is this even worth it? And then it's like a switch shifted and it went off. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it's just something happened where I went over the top of the hill and now it's all
the tipping point.
Yeah.
You reached it, right? Where it's almost, when we hear all of these quote unquote, and I say this because it's such a well-known phrase, but so false, is the whole overnight success, right? There is no overnight success. It's just that we don't hear about the slugging through the mud and the trudging uphill. But once you hit that point, right, wherever it is, whatever it is, the accelerator kicks in. And I'd love to hear your thoughts there too. Like, how did the business shift at that tipping point? Like, what sorts of things were you having to address that you hadn't had to think about before?
For me, it was about how to suddenly juggle the new clients that I had. Like, I'd always wanted multiple clients, and I was like, yeah, like every month, I'm thinking, okay, I can take on up to like 4 clients a month. And when things actually start to happen like that, then it's like, oh crap, like, hold on, I need to figure out my childcare. I need to figure out making sure my my partner is situated with the kids at home, and I need to make sure I know how to juggle my time. And so it just creates kind of some new challenges. But for me, it was like welcome challenges, because I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for this for a long time. I'm ready to deal with these challenges now. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't too scary. And now I think as a partnership, Chelsea and I are enjoying the growth of figuring out how we work together, and how, we have our own styles with certain things. And so like, it's really cool to see how we approach certain things, what kind of clientele we each attract, and how we, I don't know, how we do everything together. So it's a whole new world of figuring that out, which has been really exciting.
Yeah. And particularly in 2020, a whole new world.
Yeah.
Man, if we ever thought the odds were against ourselves before, throw in a highly contagious disease that makes you totally rethink how you're going to serve your clients.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, I mean, Beth, if you want to jump in and answer just kind of how we've had to adapt to COVID.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So here actually all across the US right now, I would say that hospitals are really limiting visitors because of COVID. And so doulas are no longer allowed to be in the birth room with their clients in the hospital. And that was a big kind of like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? How does this work? And scrambling. I would say the last 2 weeks or so, I mean, Chelsea and I have been like deep in scramble mode of, okay, how do we do this? And
being very reactive.
Yeah. And like figuring out, putting together all of our resources of how do we present, because a lot of doula work is hands-on, and you're actually in the birth room with the clients, like squeezing their hips, putting counter pressure on their back, holding them while they sway with you. And so we want to make sure that the partner feels now completely empowered and educated to feel like they can fill that role as much as possible. Right. And then we're going to be filling in the kind of a virtual doula role. So we're going to actually be, in the birth space, but on their phone, like on Zoom, awesome. Basically, like, here we are, we're going to give suggestions, we're going to give you recommendations, we're going to encourage you, but we're not there in person. And so one cool thing is that we've talked to and had some conference calls and stuff with other doulas that have done a lot of virtual care, because some doulas have already been doing this for a while with people that are living in remote places that maybe don't have access to doulas as much, or people who know they want the support but don't necessarily think they need someone in their space. So it's been cool to see that there are people doing this, and
that's interesting.
Yeah, and being really successful at it, and seeing, like, Chelsea and I were just talking today, like, okay, we got to add this to our actual menu of services
100%
forever. Yeah, because now it's going to open up that whole new niche of people that want that.
Yes. Well, and Chelsea was actually my doula. And had a fabulous experience. And just recently, my husband and I thought there was a potential we might be moving to the East Coast. And I've said to her, I was like, Chelsea, if I have another baby, I'm flying you out.
And I will be there in a heartbeat.
But I mean, I guess now there's a digital option too.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I think, for women, like any birthing person who is, it's a second time birth or a third time birth. Your partner's kind of already maybe been there through with you for the first birth. And so you kind of already know how things going. And so I think a niche of virtual birth at that point is kind of really helpful. Someone that you can bounce ideas off of, and especially during labor when, things are working birth has stalled. And so that's when you could like jump on your phone or give us a shout out and just be like, hey, how do I approach this situation? Or, hey, we're to the pushing stage. Let's, remind me how to be an effective pusher, and having those conversations. So yeah, I think virtual, at first I was really hesitant because I got into the doula world at first to be that hands-on support. That really fit like a personal need of mine to be kind of a service oriented person, you know, with my hands and being able to be there as a support, because I felt like I didn't really have that so much in my own personal births. And so I wanted to be able to be that for someone else. But this is, you know, it's had to stretch us even more to be able to potentially think about virtual. And now I'm kind of excited about the opportunities that, you know, we could help women. I had last year when I, on my Instagram account, I had a woman reach out to me in the Maldives talking to me about, hey, I really want you to help me with some birth options. And I would love it if you could be here. But now I'm like, well, I mean, a trip to the Maldives would be amazing. But, you know, like, let's realistically think about this. I think I could definitely help her virtually now. So this is giving us the tools to be able to move forward with even helping, you know, birthing people all over the world. So
if anything, right, we could nickname COVID for being the catalyst to creative thinking we never thought we'd have to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's been cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's optimistic. That's true. I think it's cool to see how it's forcing us into all these new realms that were like, at first it feels really scary.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of get into it, you're kind of like, whoa, this is a whole, I'd never even considered this way of doing this thing that I'm doing now, and how it's just expanding.
Successful, right?
Yeah.
You think like, my world just got turned upside down. Am I even going to be able to survive? When in fact, sometimes the opposite can be very true. You end up thriving more than you thought you ever could have.
Totally. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to pivot a bit, talk to me a little bit about how you sell your idea. And the idea here is probably choosing to go with a doula, and I know that you support all forms of birthing plans and such. So that's why I didn't want to say the idea is natural birth or this or that, right? But maybe just having a birthing partner there with you. But how do you sell your idea?
Yeah. So we, like you said, we support all births, medicated, unmedicated, home births, up to surgical births. So, and everything in between. And we really appreciate and really truly believe that there is a space for all of those types of births. But essentially we want to continue to be that bridge between a medical world and a holistic approach. And so by doing that, we take extra education courses. We're consistently reading and learning new techniques and tools that we can use to help these birthing people in the space of labor and their partners, essentially, too. We truly believe that every birthing person gets to have a choice, and we want them to be able to make their choice. And so we're advocating and helping you realize, you know, in the realm of labor, there's a lot of like yes type scenarios that could come up, you know, where a staff member could come in and be like, okay, we want to do this, this, and this. And we put a lot of trust and faith in the medical staff. But sometimes we need to remember, and we call it the BRAIN acronym, where we just have you kind of pause for a minute, think about the options, realize, is this an emergency type situation, or do I have time to think about it? And so it's really important for us as doulas to really just be able to advocate and give you those options, so that then you can make the best decision for you in that moment of birth and labor. And so I think, you know, when you're the person in birth, I know a lot of doulas who will have their own births and still hire a doula. Because when you're that person going through labor, you kind of tend to forget everything you just learned about. But as a doula, that's our role, is to be able to help remind you of those tools or techniques that we taught you, or help you be able to find your rhythm of breathing, or, you know, or help just advocate for you in the space that you get to make a choice. So yeah, I would say that's kind of our main goals as doulas. Birth is a natural thing. We've been doing it since the dawn of human race. And so it doesn't always have to be a medical option, but there is also a time and a place for that as well.
Right. So how do you, I think there's a certain type of people, more stereotypically, right, that might get drawn to having a doula. How do you see it as part of a business plan to try and expose those ideas, that option, to people who aren't stereotypically people who would involve themselves with a doula? Or do you see yourselves more as differentiating yourself apart from other doulas, so that when the doula seeking stereotypes come looking for one, they know that they can reach out to you in the niche of doulaship? Like, you get what I'm saying here? Sorry, that was kind of long-winded.
Yeah. Chelsea, do you mind if I pop in
Yeah,
here?
go for it.
So, oh gosh, now I lost my train of thought. Mom brain here. So a couple of things I wanted to mention about what you're asking about, because one thing is that there are a lot of doulas out there.
Yeah.
Even though the burnout rate's really high, like there's always new doulas coming in. And so especially I feel like here in Utah, there's a lot of doulas. There's a lot of people having babies here. So there's a lot of birth related things in general, which is awesome. But it can sometimes feel like a little bit of a saturated market coming into it. You're like, what sets me apart? Why would someone hire me instead of someone else? And so I think finding that niche is really, really, really important, and really narrowing in on that. But what you said about, that there are maybe some people might think there's a stereotypical type of person who would hire a doula. And in some respects that may be true, but I want to put out there that so people know that doulas, we're not medical providers. So we're not there to deliver the baby. We don't do anything medical. We're there as an adjunct person. We're there as a support specifically hired by the parents themselves to support, educate, advocate for in the birth space. I would say the majority of our clients, I am saying the majority of our clients have hospital births and get epidurals. And so I think it's a misconception that doulas are only for unmedicated birth, home birth, birth center birth, things like that. Because while we do fully support that, and I would say people who do have births that want to go unmedicated in a hospital specifically would really highly benefit from a doula, because it's really helpful to have someone there to help you to cope with the pain if you're not going to use medication. But we support all different kinds of people, and so there actually really isn't a stereotypical client that we work with, because we work with a lot of people that know they want an epidural, and they just want to typically see how long they can kind of go without until they feel like, okay, I'm ready for that now. And we fully support that. We want people to know that they have options and make that decision from an educated place, so they're not feeling that they're pushed into a decision by the staff or by anyone else, but that they're coming to it from a fully aware, educated place of what they want to do.
Right. So how would you say then, I mean, because this is kind of shifting back to like a comment you made earlier about when you first started the business, and you were slugging through the mud for those first couple of years, like, who's going to find me? Like, how do you get found? How do you sell your idea to get people to then be like, not only consider your product, but choose you?
Yeah. I know for me, I talk about birth to everybody I can, and I talk about what I do as a doula to everybody I can. Someone told me once, like, because a lot of us have like multiple hats, right? We wear. So I also have a degree in music therapy. So I'm a music therapist. I work with older adults. I work with a lot of different people with music therapy. But if I'm trying to grow my doula business, if someone asks, so what do you do? I used to always say, well, I'm a music therapist and I also work as a doula. But like, forget that. Like, talk about only what you want them to hire you for, which is like, I'm a doula. I support people in the birth space making choices that are right for them, and I help them to advocate for themselves and have an amazing, awesome birth experience.
Yeah.
And so like, that's like, whoa, really cool. You know, people want to know more about that. And so always talking about what you do, always sharing with everybody you know. I mean, I don't like to be pushy at all, but I like to let people know, you know, if someone's talking about birth or pregnancy, or if they're pregnant, like, I might not say, oh my God, you should hire me as your doula, but I might say like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Have you considered what kind of birth support you're going to have? Have you considered a doula? Do you know what that is? And just seeing what they say. Um, and then for me, that tipping point that kind of happened, it occurred when I was able to get one or two clients that were like, I don't know what they're like my golden clients. Like, they just referred me then to all their friends. And it was like, I think a lot of us doulas have that, where suddenly you have somebody who's like, oh, I have a sister who's pregnant. I have a cousin who's pregnant. I have a best friend who's pregnant. I'm sending them all to you. And that speaks to also doing a really awesome job at what you
Yeah.
do. Because if you kind of suck at it, if you go into it and you're like, I'm going to be your doula, and then you're not great at it, then they're not going to refer you. But if you're amazing and they feel exponentially supported and like they had an amazing experience because of you, even if their birth didn't go as planned, but if they felt supported,
Yeah.
educated, you know, if they felt like they were fully supported, then they're going to have a better outcome overall and experience. And then that's when they say, oh, I want to refer you to everybody I know. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
Yeah. Well, in my first job out of college, I had a boss who talked a lot about, or he used the phrase, providing a white gloved experience. You know, thinking of like hotels and the pillows turned down and the chocolates on the pillow and every detail is thought of.
Yeah.
Because when you focus on providing that experience, that is the result, right?
Yep.
It's not just a positive experience, but you end up with promoters, evangelists of your product, of your service, right?
Yep.
Which then just only goes to help promote your business.
Totally.
So I think that actually shifts really nicely into your 3 takeaways.
Yeah. So our takeaways, we thought a lot about kind of how we became successful and what we do to try to what we've done in the past to try to help ourselves to make our business grow. So the first one, excuse me, the first takeaway is about finding your ideal client. And not really finding them, but taking a minute to imagine that person, imagine the client that you want to work with, and get so specific about it. Like, write these things down, get so specific about it that you think about, where does this person grocery shop? Where do they go to work out? What do they do on the weekends? What kind of pets do they have? How old are they? Where did they go to school? What's their race? What's their orientation? What's their religion? You can kind of think about as many aspects of that person as possible to almost create a picture in your mind of who it is that you're marketing to. A lot of doulas say, oh, I love serving all people. And that's cool, but like, it's not going to help you to narrow down your focus if you just say, I love all birthing people.
Especially if you're in a market where it's saturated.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for us, we've really started to narrow down into, my ideal client is someone who is over 30, who is not originally from Utah, who's moved here for some reason, who lives in Salt Lake City, who maybe identifies as LGBTQ. Those are several things that kind of narrow down to that focus. And so creating that vision in your mind can really be helpful. And even going so far as to create a vision board of pictures of what that person loves, pictures of what they do, so that when you're advertising, when you're talking about what you do on social media or on your blog or wherever, you're talking about it as if you're talking to that exact person, because that's the person that's going to end up finding you and working with you. So that's our number one takeaway. Our second takeaway is coming up with a list of questions that keep your ideal client awake at night. What are the things that related to their birth, if for us it's a pregnant person who's our ideal client, of course. So what are the things that's keeping them awake at night? What are they worried about with their pregnancy? What are they concerned about with how their birth is going to go? and coming up with those questions and then using that as a platform to blog about the answers to those questions or to write a post on social media about the answers to those specific questions. So that's another takeaway. The
Helping
third
all
one,
your content be immediately relevant and resonate, right? Because
exactly.
if it falls flat, they'll unfollow you or the right? But if it is answering those burning questions, especially in your space, right? You're wanting to provide not just answers, but comfort and security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last one is to find the people that are doing what you want to be doing and reach out to those people. So like making a list of 5 or 10 people, either locally in your area or even virtually now that we have so much access to everybody everywhere online through social media. Making a list of those people and just every week going down that list one by one, reaching out to those people and saying, if they're local, like, hey, I'd love to buy you lunch. Can I bring you a cup of coffee at your job? Can I bring you some bagels in the morning? And take 10 minutes of your time and just ask you a couple questions or find out a little bit about how you got to where you are, because you're where I want to be in a couple of years or whatnot. If they're not local and they're just virtual, ask if you can set up a time to FaceTime or Skype with them, and then send them a thank you card in the mail with a gift card in it to Starbucks or something. I think it's really important to show appreciation for people taking the time to let you pick their brain. Because I know even for us as doulas, like people ask us to pick our brains sometimes, and I'm always up for that. And I want to know that they're respecting my time and that they appreciate the time that I'm giving them. For anyone, especially entrepreneurs, our personal time is our greatest asset, right? Like,
you have to guard it.
Yeah, you have to guard it, and you can't be wasting no time. Like, it's not worth it. And so to really appreciate those people who give you their time is really important.
Well, I appreciate you two for giving your time on this Wednesday evening. I know one or both of you might be on call right now. We've all got littles. But I think these conversations are so instrumental, especially as we are seeing how entrepreneurs in every space are having to adapt to COVID right now, and their entrepreneurship is being stretched to the limits, right? We all need to hear from one another, see how someone else is approaching the exact same situation, even if it's in a different space, because and I think I said this in our conversation before I actually started recording, but this could be like one of the greatest catalysts for creativity. And we could end up seeing more entrepreneurs than we've ever seen before because of this, because we have more problems than we've ever had before, right? But it's a daunting thing. And so it's wonderful and inspiring to see you two and how you have adapted to it, and I'm excited to see what Heart Tones Birth is going to do in the rest of 2020.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this was amazing. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just going to